Hi, everyone, and welcome to Empowering the Opposition. My name is Lexi Wilson. I'm a licensed master social worker.
And my name is Dr. Nafis Alam, and our topic today will be spirituality and religion. Lexi, you've been looking into a bunch of different religions that and what they believe and what their positions are, how long they've been around, and it's clearly an interesting topic for the both of us.
Yeah. I've always been drawn to spirituality and just learning more about, religions around the world, what they believe. And I don't know, it's just kind of something that I've always been curious about and just learning more about from people. Mm-hmm. So I thought today it would just be kind of interesting to learn a little bit more about different world religions and to just kind of maybe learn some things that I had, none of us had really known. And to kind of start off, what I was initially curious of was just the geographical makeup of world religions. Mm-hmm. And the best thing I could find was a statistic from 2015 from the Pew Research Center. And it talks about the largest religious groups in the entire world. And this is what they came up with. So 2.3 billion people in 2015 considered themselves Christian, 1.8 billion Muslims, 1.2 unaffiliated, 1.1 billion Hindu, 0.5 billion Buddhists, 0.4 folk religion, 0.1 other religions, and 0.01, so 1%, Jews. And so, I just thought that was kind of interesting I hadn't ever really thought about like the geographical makeup of the world and what percentage people were of these different religions.
Yeah, and religious identification also differs from location to location. So the way that I was raised, despite the fact that I myself am not Muslim, my parents still believe that I am because their opinion or their mindset, or my mom specifically, her mindset is that you are the religion that you were born into, as though it's part of your DNA, as though it's blood. Versus others like myself who, I don't identify as Muslim. I'm agnostic, which is a religion in and of itself. We're going to be talking a little bit about agnosticism and atheism today as well. And I consider myself agnostic despite the fact that many people around the world would either see my last name or understand my parents' religion and believe my religion to be the same. So it also differs how your religious affiliation is determined. Do you determine it, or does your lineage determine it? It differs from, location to location. I know my religious journey was, I love telling this story because it's one of those things where, it's one of those, with religion and spirituality, faith is a prerequisite, right? It's not always something that you can see in front of you, and it's always something that you have to sort of believe in, and then you'd see the proof instead of seeing the proof and then believing in it. So for me, I've always been of the mindset that I don't believe something that I don't first see the proof of. And one of the first questions that I remember asking, once I was able to understand and comprehend and things like that, I would ask my mom, how long did it take to create the universe? She would say, well, the God made the universe, or Allah made the universe. So I would ask, how long did it take? She was like, I think it was 5 days was the answer in the Muslim religion. I think in Christianity it's 7.
7.
7 days. So my follow-up question was, where? 5 days where? If Earth doesn't exist, how are you measuring a day? Right? Because a day is one revolution of Earth around its own axis. And if the universe is yet being built, then how are you measuring a day? And furthermore, there are a place like Venus, for example. Venus's year is shorter than its day because it travels around the sun quicker than it travels around its own axis. Which means 1 day in Venus is longer than 1 year in Venus.
So essentially, how we define time or days could actually be very different from the reality.
Yeah. So that would be my question in Christianity too. And this isn't in any way to challenge religion or anything.
I mean,
like
this
that.
is your own story.
Yeah.
And I absolutely think it's great to be able to share these kind of questions that we have and kind of how we got to where we are. So yeah, I think that's a great thing to share.
I think with Christianity or Islam, whatever it is, any religion that has like a time of how long it took to create the universe, for example, that usually tends to be the first question that comes to mind. But like, if we're going to empower the opposition, I can't pretend to always be obviously in the right. Most of the time I'm not in the right. And the idea here isn't necessarily days, right? It could in fact be what God or the Creator considered to be days, which in human years or human time could have been billions of years, which would make perfect sense. It would jive well with the theory of the Big Bang, which actually still remains a theory even though it's more or less been proven. So it's...
How did you... I guess I'm curious is... At what point did you kind of decide to start questioning things and shifting your viewpoints more towards an atheist agnostic viewpoint?
I think I've always been a rebel when it comes to this kind of stuff. So as soon as I was being told that I have to pray, that I have to believe in something, and I wasn't seeing anything in front of me, no proof or anything like that. It's not like...
It was more logical for you.
Yeah. Well, it was illogical for me. Religion.
It was illogical, but the reason as to why you changed was because the lack of logic.
Because of logic, right? Yeah. So my thinking was that, like, if it doesn't make logical sense, then how can I say that it is actually true? But this is where I have beef with atheists too. So like, I'm sure I'll make enemies all over the place today. So being an agnostic, it usually turns people off who are religious, like, people who follow Christianity or Muslim or Islam or Buddhism or Hinduism or Judaism. But then, just to throw this at atheists, they're, in my opinion, a religious group too. Because think about the faith that you need to have to believe that God exists or religion exists. You'd have to have the same amount of faith as in illogical belief in something that has not yet been proven to say that God does not exist.
Yeah.
So
in itself, I mean, it definitely could be considered its own, not necessarily religion, but a train of thought, that people follow and sort of attend to, I guess. I think that's really, really interesting.
I think with religion, though, what I failed to see, and failed past tense and probably present tense too, is that a religion is a lot more than God and angels and things like that. It brings communities together. It teaches values. To be perfectly honest with you, despite the fact that I don't identify as Muslim, I can, whether I like it or not, I am the product, partially, of some Muslim teachings. As in some of the lessons that I learned. There was one lesson that I learned about just protecting life. For example, I was taught that Muhammad was protected by a spider from like enemies and stuff like that. So we're supposed to see spiders in like a positive light.
Interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah. So it's the appreciation of insect life. So like, which is life too, it's not demeaning to any life, but it teaches you lessons that are underlying, and I'm certainly the product of that, even though at this time I am agnostic. I can't pretend that I haven't been influenced by religion, positively and negatively.
Yeah, I think for me, I've had, a different experience with religion. I think, actually I know, ever since I was young, I always felt I've always felt this sort of connection and faith and like yearning for something more and feeling something more. So I grew up in the Catholic Church, and I went every Sunday with my mom and my sister, and my sister and I would beat each other up in the pews, and my mom would have to like tell us to shut up, and
taking the Lord's name in vain.
Oh gosh, oh yeah. And that was kind of the beginning of like where my faith journey, I guess, kind of came from. And just going to, those little camps. And as I got older, I started questioning things more, but not that I've never really questioned that God wasn't there. I've always just questioned like why things happen. I don't know. I've always had this sense of like certainty within my own life that he does exist. And once I got to college or my undergrad, I explored my faith quite a bit more and went on mission trips and became a part of a church up there, and read the Bible a lot more and really delved into my faith more, and it really became a pretty big part of who I was. And I wouldn't change it really for the world. And once I started grad school, I just it kind of went on the back burner for me, but it's still something that's really important to me and something I want to continue to explore within myself. And I don't know, I've just seen a lot of crazy stuff in my life, and a lot of coincidences and circumstances that I just can't explain, even with knowledge of science and psychology and understanding of so many different things. I don't know, I've just always felt this like sense of like peace and comfort, and that's just kind of been my journey.
And that by itself is valuable. The sense of peace and comfort, the sense of purpose. Even if it turns out that there is no God or religion or anything like that, you still reap the benefits of believing. And that cannot be discounted. So you can make an argument that religion does not have to have an end game in order for it to be valuable now. And I'll it's the weirdest thing when I tell people this, but even though I'm agnostic, I do pray to God. And the only reason I do is actually like painfully logical, so much so that people would... The logic behind it is that I pray even though I don't know that there is a God, because I am agnostic. I can't prove it, therefore it's not, it's until it's proven, it's not real to me. But I pray to hedge. To
just save your ass if something happens.
Exactly. I pray to hedge, and I say it, the way that I pray and stuff like that. I actually say, if you exist, I just want to make sure that we're good,
You're like, please.
Yeah, and I'll ask for things. And, like yourself, a lot of great things have happened in my life, and, I wonder to myself about, why bad things happen too.
Yeah, yes.
But then, it's one of those things, where some bad things need to happen so that worse things don't,
I completely agree with that. And I don't know about, any of you listening, or even Uniface, when I feel like it's times when shit hits the fan and life's horrible, when you're like, wow, maybe there is something, or you really start to possibly search for more, or yearn for more, whatever that looks like for you. And it is interesting, at least in my life. I can only speak to my experience, but when things are going really good, I'm like, I'm so busy, blah. But then when life just hits you like a semi truck, you're like, oh shit, I need something more in my life. And it's just interesting how when life kind of turns the tables on you, you begin to kind of question those things.
And it is comforting to think that those who have been close to you, if they've passed, then they're at least alive somewhere, maybe watching upon you or something like that, or guiding the way for you, so this way you stay safe. It's a comforting feeling to have, because death is real. There's nothing agnostic about death.
Death is very real.
Yeah. So what happens when people die? If I had the answer to that, I'd be a billionaire.
Knows, yeah.
But the idea here is that death happens, but one of the ways that we're comforted with a loved one's passing is through the belief that there is more to life than just life itself here. And maybe that is the case. Maybe that is the case. And, if we're empowering the opposition, we must consider all viewpoints. And maybe that is the case. And maybe this is just, one of the laps that we run, if you believe in reincarnation, maybe you'll come back as a different kind of being dependent on, how you've behaved here. That's more Hinduism. If you believe in like a heaven or hell, then it's about behaving.
And about justice.
Right,
yeah.
Exactly. And then on the flip side, maybe there's nothing. Maybe after death, it's just, fade to black, like turning off a TV and there's just nothing on anymore. But both would give us enough to say that life is worthwhile. Whether life is worthwhile because of what happens after it, or what life is worthwhile because of what happens during it. Life is always worthwhile because, in the second example, the latter example, let's say life is all there is, and our, what average is 77, 76 years that we have to live. Let's say that there is no afterlife. We can't say that it's meaningless because we've still left an impact on children, on future generations, on whoever it may be. Yet for our loved ones, it's comforting to them to believe that we are somewhere and not just over.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And there is a lot of benefits and comfort that, different religions have and spirituality has, right? You have, as Nafis kind of spoke to earlier about, community, you have service, people who are willing to serve their community, to volunteer. You have, sort of this giving mentality, this focus and central interest on love. Really, if you look across most religions, compassion, kindness, and then also, empowering the opposition. We also see that, so many wars throughout history have been because of religion, and many thousands and thousands of people have died as a result of this. We see, so many needless fights and wars over ideology, theology, when in reality the central tenets of probably both of those religions have been largely ignored just to prove, I'm right. So I think it's important to kind of speak to both of those things.
So it's, so far, you're right. We have been talking about the pros of religion. Indeed, religious differences have been the precursor for many conflicts, violent conflicts, historically. You need only go to the Middle East and Palestine, Jerusalem, and all these Middle Eastern conflicts to see where this comes from. And, if we are to empower the opposition, then we also have to take into account the idea that maybe these conflicts are good. Maybe that they're not all bad, which, I think you and I both might, believe that. But what is the opposing viewpoint of that? If we were to say that these conflicts, these religious wars are good, then we would have to be doing so in such a way that we're painting religion as such a major thing in one's life that you'd have to die for it or fight for it physically in order for it to be real to you. And those who are not willing to fight for it might not be true believers. And that might be a rubric for seeing who truly is religiously privileged, I guess, or has religious advantages in that sense.
And there's multiple religions that do state that, if you're not willing to, really sacrifice your life for another person or even your religion, then, are you really a follower? And that's kind of across multiple religions.
Yeah, and that's another reason why I don't feel like I am religious. I don't even think I would give up my life for myself, which doesn't make sense because how would you do
for
that?
Myself, not exactly sure how that would work.
No, I guess I see the point because it's again it goes back to community. Your community, you're such a big fan and big proponent of your community that you're willing to do the best things and the worst things for the benefit of that community. And maybe it's a deficit or maybe it's a surplus on my end. I can't be the judge of that, obviously. But I just don't feel that way about anyone or anything.
And also, too, I'd like to speak to a couple things in regards to some of the harm, outside of wars, right? I have a couple friends who have been extremely harmed from religion because of different aspects of, life choices they've made or just different aspects of who they are just as a human being. And that has really caused a lot of harm to them because of rejection from, their religion, their families. And so we know the, psychological impact of being ostracized from groups that you've grown up with, your family. And so I think, it's important to point out, those things as well. However, nonetheless, I just think religion and spirituality is so interesting. And it's something that people are so uncomfortable talking about when in reality, it's fascinating stuff. Even within social work, it's just something that's not really discussed in the curriculum, and which I think, is it could be definitely discussed more, because spirituality is a huge part of many people's lives, regardless of whatever that looks like for them. And it's something that, can be very important in who they are.
Yeah.
And,
well, we could certainly do a better job of custom tailoring intervention models to fit someone's individual spirituality and religion, but in empowering the opposition and considering the opposing viewpoint, that would mean that every individual gets their own unique service plan, which would be very unrealistic to be able to sustain and train
to do
professionals on too.
I think also, though, there's the ability to have a basic understanding of different beliefs, right? Like within curriculum, we teach a lot about, different cultural values of different groups, which can be, very different, but we don't really discuss that much about different, religious views, which could be very, beneficial to add in there.
Yeah.
But I think it'd be interesting. Nafis and I were just kind of looking at this long list of different religions, and a lot of them, honestly, I haven't even really heard of. But it'd be kind of interesting to just kind of go through some of them and talk about them.
Yeah, well, I've already talked about atheism.
Yeah, we've talked about that. We talked about Christianity a little bit, Islam. What I kind of want to cover a little bit too is Buddhism and Hinduism. I really don't know too much about it. I know the basics, so I think that would be kind of interesting to talk about. So I think this first one, so this is Buddhism. So it says there's 360 million adherents approximately worldwide, but I don't know how up to date this is. So it was founded 520 BC in India. They believe in many gods. Buddha taught that nothing is permanent.
So it's polytheistic.
Yeah, polytheistic. The human situation and life purpose is to avoid suffering and gain enlightenment and release from the cycle of rebirth, or at least attain a better rebirth. Afterlife is the reincarnation, which we had discussed a little bit, until someone gains enlightenment. And then some practices are meditation, mantras, devotion to deities. That's kind of interesting.
Yeah, it is.
I don't know. I'm not really sure about the difference between Okay, here's Hinduism. Hinduism has 900 million adherents, also indigenous to India. There's one supreme reality, also polytheistic. They believe humans are in bondage to ignorance and illusion, but are able to escape purpose and gain release. Afterlife, reincarnation to gain enlightenment, practices yoga, meditation, worship, devotion.
Well, they're both in search of enlightenment. They both are, polytheistic, and they're.
What's the difference?
Well, I would think that the difference would be the practice. Because Hinduism, and then not everything is listed here. So Buddhists tend often to be vegetarians or vegan. Hinduism is all about, respecting cows, so they won't eat beef, but they'll...
Because they're reincarnated people.
Exactly. So there are, even though you can't summarize a religion in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 little, columns here, right?
Yeah.
So even though here it may seem similar, there are underlying differences. You'd be surprised to find that Islam and Judaism have a great deal of similarities too.
And so does Christianity too. Yeah. It's very interesting looking at all the similarities between them. Is it true in Islam that they saw Jesus as a prophet or not?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, that's what I thought. Yeah.
They see Jesus as a prophet, but Muhammad as the prophet.
The prophet. Mm-hmm. And was Muhammad? This is just Q&A because I don't know that much about it. Was Muhammad? Was he there after? Like, was he born during the time like after Jesus or like before?
Oh, that I actually don't know.
Yeah. I don't know. I have no idea either.
Yeah. But all of the religions, like the oldest religion is Judaism.
Mm-hmm.
So everything branched from there.
Judaism.
Which is an interesting thing to also think about in, interreligious affairs is that, if everything started with Judaism, then you might have an argument suggesting that is the true religion.
Since that was there the longest.
Right.
And what's also interesting is... Jesus was like quoted as king of the Jews, which is really interesting. Yeah. What about in Islam? Was there any like?
It's Muhammad.
Muhammad, yeah.
And like but then the opposing viewpoint of Judaism being the religion is that, over the course of time, you could make an argument that, Judaism lost its way and had to branch out into other religions so that it could maintain its original.
Well, they're like 0.2% of the world's religion now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they're like not even a bar on here almost. What's interesting.
Yeah.
I thought they were larger.
Yeah. No, I thought they were larger too, but I think like the pockets of certain communities, they are larger.
Yeah, that's true.
But we've also got some other...
interesting ones.
Yeah.
Okay,
Satanism.
Yeah, we can talk about that. We can talk about the New Age too, which is so interesting. Okay, I got to talk about the New Age.
Yeah.
Because that's been a new thing lately. So like the New Age religion is like something that's come about within the past like 5-10 years. Where is it on here? Oh, here it is. And so I actually see it a lot on TikTok, which is kind of interesting, but it's really geared around like astrology, mysticism, yoga, crystals, tarot readings, holistic medicine, psychic, angels, communication, fortune telling. And I didn't know this, but they believe in reincarnation based on karma, which is interesting.
Interesting.
It's all about consciousness, international peace. They can ascend, more emphasis on later than now. The divine is an impersonal life force that pervades all things. Yeah, I've noticed this becoming a really huge thing within the past like couple years, which is very interesting because it's so new.
Yeah, with astrology and crystals and yoga.
Everyone knows this person.
Yeah, I feel like I know all of these people.
I know them all. I could literally name them all.
Yeah, so it's interesting that is the new. I didn't know that's what it was called.
Yeah, it's
New
called
Age religion.
New Age, yeah.
Yeah, but like if we're gonna empower the opposition again, right? Is New Age religion just taking bits and pieces from existing religions?
Yeah, like taking all the good things that.
Yeah, that could be.
Yeah, and then let's see. Oh, Scientology.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. I don't know if any of you have seen some of the documentaries. I highly suggest. I think they're super interesting. So L. Ron Hubbard was like the founder of this, and he basically wrote more science fiction novels than like any American writer ever in the history of like the United States. And so I was super interested in learning more about this, and Leah Remini?
Yep.
Yeah, I can't remember how to say her last name.
Yeah.
She talks a lot about her experiences within Scientology, and they had like this ship called the something board. I can't remember. But it was basically this ship, and they would kind of like take the ship all around the world, and there's just so many things. It's very, very interesting, and like it's a pay to play kind of thing. So, and then you can get up to, I think the highest level is like OT8, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, don't quote me on that, but it's like OT8. It's like the highest level, and you get to know all the secrets. But then they do this thing also called auditing. So basically, they put you on this like kind of interesting little lie detector. It's basically like confession, but they record it all, and they've been known to like use it against people when they try to leave. So they did that to like Leah Remini and other famous. But then you have like other famous people like Brad Pitt and.
There's something drawing celebrities to this religion. I just wonder what it is.
Oh, really? I think I know what it is.
What?
They're treated like a god.
Oh, okay.
They're absolutely treated like a god. They're treated like royalty.
So you're saying that
It's like they're worshiping themselves. That's why I think they enjoy it. Yeah.
So this is the religion that allows them to
be God. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, they treat them literally like a king or queen. And because I was curious about that too. I'm like, why this religion? But yeah, I think it was Brad Pitt, I believe. And he was like about to get married. And they were talking about how like they basically were setting everything up. They were trying to set him up with all these women, and you know, they kind of used him as a pawn sort of to like get people to join the church, but like they would just like worship him, do whatever they wanted, like very basically he essentially became a god of their religion, a spokesperson. So that's why they love celebrities. They love celebrities so much they have their own building called the Celebrity Center. And yeah, so it's only for celebrities.
Okay.
And basically, yeah, they just get treated like royalty and pampered, and so that's why they love it. Because
so if we're gonna paint this in a negative light, we also have to paint it in a positive light, don't we?
Sure.
So maybe celebrities do know what's best. Maybe, you know, because of the access that they have, maybe, you know, of who they are and all the experiences that they've had the money and the fame to get to experience. Maybe they know what's best for the population. I'm not saying that they do, but if we are going to entertain opposing viewpoints, then we have to understand that there is a viewpoint that suggests that celebrities know what's best.
And also like understanding too, like with any religion, right? There's not all right or wrong, right? Like there are attractive things about any religion, and with Scientology in particular, a lot of people who are in it or who had left had said that, you know, the community was so strong and was family, and that was super important to them. And so there was, you know, good as far as that community, feeling like, you know, you're becoming a better person, you're giving, you're volunteering, you know, you're doing all those things. And so yeah, I think there's reasons why people are attracted to, you know, these different types of religions.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was just saying stuff I had seen from the documentary.
No, that's definitely interesting. Satanism has always been interesting to me, as just the idea of essentially just, I guess, devil worshipping, right? That would be like synonymous with that. And just here it says atheist or agnostic. Church of Satan doesn't make membership numbers.
But how can you be atheist or agnostic if you acknowledge and worship Satan?
I think
that doesn't make any sense.
That's the thing. So agnostic is the ultimate like neutrality in that like you're not saying yes or no. But I wonder to myself who is putting these lists together. So someone who may be highly religious may think of atheists and agnostics as being Satanists because they, you know, refuse to play the game, for example.
Yeah, but Satanism is an actual religion with, it even says here, you know, 9 statements, rituals, all, you know, all these different things. And so that doesn't really make sense to me because they are ritual, you know.
Maybe the lack of religion is the religion.
Yeah,
and
maybe.
The lack of religion is the religion of Satanism. I don't know. It's interesting to look at. Stoicism was also one of my favorites.
Where is that one? That one was. Oh, here it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's read this one. So, I had before the podcast, I had saw Stoicism, and I was like, "Oh, Nafis, here's one for you."
There you go.
So the adherence to Stoicism worldwide is unknown. Its origins date back to Zeno in c. 313 BC, Athens. Gods of the universe, pantheism, the logos pervades the universe. I don't even know. Does pan mean many? I think many.
Yeah.
But then poly also means many. So
Yeah.
I don't really know the difference. The purpose is happiness achieved by virtue, living reasonably. Afterlife, possible continued existence of the soul, but not a personal existence. Practices, ethical and philosophical training. Self-reflection, careful judgment, and inner calm. Text, fragments of founders plus later writers. Like
Marcus Aurelius, who I've read quite extensively. And yeah, it is the idea of just the inner calm. To the point where
inner peace. Yeah.
And it to the point where it would sometimes appear as though you just have no affect whatsoever. Like you're just bland. And it's essentially the idea that the highs are lower and the lows are higher. That's it. You know, it's not that you don't get too happy, too hyped up, but you also don't get too down on yourself either.
Interesting.
Yeah.
There's just so many here.
I know. I mean, we this would be like a 2 or 3 hour podcast if we go through all of
these.
Ooh,
Rastafari. We just have to. I'm so curious because I don't really know much about Rastafari. So it's the teachings of Marcus Garvey in the 1920s Jamaica. Approximate world adherence 1 million. God is Jah, who became an incarnate in Jesus, who is black, and I'm sure I'm mispronouncing this, and Haile Selassie. Human situation and life purpose. Humans are temples of Jah. Salvation is primarily in this world and consists of liberation from oppression and return to Africa. Afterlife. Some Rastas will experience ever-living physical immortality. Heaven is a return to Eden, which is in Africa. Practices. Many practices based on Jewish biblical law. Abstinence from most or all meat, artificial foods, and alcohol. Use of marijuana in religious rituals and for medicine. Wearing of dreadlocks. Text. Holy Pibbi, the Black Man's Bible. The Ethiopian epic. Kebra Nagast, also revered. Interesting. I didn't know any of that.
Yeah, especially the Jewish biblical law. That was pretty interesting.
Very, very interesting.
Yeah. This tells you everything you need to know as far as how much overlap there is and how much...
So much.
Yeah, intercommunication there has been between religious groups influencing each other's growth. So it's really interesting in that sense. I think ultimately, we've talked about religions, but we've also talked about spirituality, and you can be perfectly spiritual without adhering to any kind of religion. And I think that that's where I would fall, just being agnostic, and that I am religiously agnostic, and I'm only praying to hedge, right, just in case there is. So in essence, I guess I would, you could consider me somewhat spiritual in that sense.
Yeah, I would say so.
Yeah, and just the idea of being comforted by the idea that people who have passed could potentially be there, just looking over you, and it sort of cushions the blow, especially as I get older, my parents get older. Life is going to happen, and death is going to happen. Yeah. So it's certainly comforting for us to think that,
to have that hope.
Yeah. But yeah, it's just the idea that that we're all gonna pass at some point, and those who are being left behind as we pass need to find comfort somehow. And for some, spirituality is the answer, not necessarily religion, but spirituality in believing that there's something more than just the life that we're living here. Right now.
And also to be said too, one thing that I think's pretty interesting and kind of more of what I'm attracted to as far as religion is a lot of people really follow religion and ceremonies and stuff like that, traditions, which I think are wonderful. But I think also too, I think relationship is something that I kind of am drawn more towards, a personal relationship with God, rather than this a barrier that I have to do this and then not do this, and then maybe I can be good enough to have a relationship. Like, I don't know. I think that's something that is very intriguing to me, and
like the merit-based.
Yeah, not merit-based. Like, I feel like God, at least in my opinion, like, wherever everyone's at, whether you're like at your highest or your lowest, doesn't matter what you do or don't do. I think God would want a relationship, not just like you have to do this and that, and then we can have, you know what I mean? I don't know. That's just,
well, that's my interpretation too.
Yeah.
And this is my what I've said to like people who think that I should be more religious, is that if there is a God, would this God be more ecstatic about me praying 5 times a day, or would this God be more ecstatic over me being good to, you know, men and women around like the planet? You know what I mean? Like, is service to the community valued more than prayer to the deity? And, you know, in that response, my subsequent response is that if there is a God, and let's assume that there is, if God is happier with people praying to God than doing God's work, then that's not a God that I want to, you know, be affiliated with.
And I think there's an argument to be made in that too, if those who do have like a relationship with God or are, you know, I don't know, like the relationship, you know, is important to them, but there are no works, like there's no fruit from what they say that they worship, then do they really have a relationship? You know, I've always kind of, you know, there's this personal relationship that people have with, you know, the God they believe in, right? Whatever that looks like or doesn't look like. And then there's also how they interact with the world around them, how they interact with those who can do nothing for them.
Right, exactly.
And sometimes, most of the time, actually all the time, I believe that how we treat those who can do nothing for us says a lot more about us than anything we say, what church we attend, what service we attend. How do we treat those who can't do anything for us?
Yeah, it's true. And like, it's very easy to treat well the people that can do much for you because you have ulterior motives and you want to get in good with that particular group or person. But those who can do nothing for you, do you see value in them? And if you don't, then well, again, if we're going to empower the opposition, right? Maybe they don't have value because they don't have value like you. And that's that's an understandable position to have, in that if you're only going to respect those who have equal or greater value, however you define value, than yourself. But I'm of the opinion of the other opinion, in that, like, you know, those who don't appear to have value might actually have more value than you realize, just because of the fact that it's a test, you know? It's sort of like, you know, your waiter or waitress. Like, how do you treat this person? Do you treat them like, you know, they're serving you? Do you treat them like, you know, they're just a part of the restaurant system? Or do you actually say, hey, how are you doing? When they ask you, how are you doing? And you say, yeah, I'll have this. Like, you know, and it's a good metric too, that I've noticed whenever I go out to dinners or lunches, you know, to see how the people around me will treat the waiters and waitresses. And I'll see that happen all the time. The waitress will be like, oh, how are you doing, sir? And then instead of answering the question, we're like, oh, I'll have this. I was like, that wasn't the question.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? So,
oh, yeah. No, I would get that all the time when I was a server. Like, you learn a lot about people who think that they're more worthy or have more inherent value than you. But I'm of the opinion, and I always will be, that everyone has the same inherent human value. I don't care how much money you have. I don't care what you've been through, what you do. Value is an inherent human quality, and that can't be taken away or changed. But I think some people like to feel better. They like to feel better than others. And so therefore they'll treat those who can do nothing for them horribly and badly. And I'm sure we've all experienced that at some point in our life, right? It's a good lesson because it helps you to see, okay, like we all have value.
Yeah. And wherever we stand, all that's important is that we understand that not everybody stands where we stand, right? Other people might hear what you're saying and say, well, no, like, you know, I think of it in a very different way because, you know, billionaire versus someone who, you know, is like, you know, making ends meet, you know, they might see it as different, even though you and I might not. It doesn't mean that
I mean, yeah, there are those other opinions, and people definitely, you know, feel those ways.
Yeah.
But I don't agree, but I'm sure there are people who believe that. Absolutely.
Well, that's all the time we have for today. I'm Dr. Nafis Alam.
And I'm Lexi Wilson, a licensed master social worker. This has been Empowering the Opposition. See you next time.